I'm Michael Allen, and this is an introduction to evangelical ethics. In this course, we'll be reflecting on how the ethical life, the good life, the moral life, is reshaped and reoriented in light of that word evangelical, in light of the gospel of Jesus Christ. The way in which we approach what is true, what is good, what is beautiful, is completely reshaped by being located in the light of the work and the person of Jesus Christ. We need to ask first and foremost, what does Christ do? And what is Christ doing? And what has been promised that will be done by Christ in the future yet to come? And only in light of his action can we think Christianly and faithfully, biblically, about what we ought to do, who we ought to be, what practices, what habits we ought to shape. Oftentimes, we think of ethics according to what might be called social mores, the habits, the likes, the tastes of a certain group. When we speak of evangelical ethics, we're not speaking sociologically of the sorts of things American evangelicals or world evangelicals like today. Rather, we're speaking theologically. In light of the evangel, that is the gospel, the good news of Jesus, we want to ask, how does this reorient us to the call of obedience, the call of faith, the call of hope, and ultimately the call of love of God and love of our neighbor? And so in this course, we'll be talking first and foremost about Christology and Trinitarian theology, who God is and what God's doing, and how that directly shapes what we're to do. What we'll see, of course, is that talking about ethics involves, first of all, talking about salvation. Talking about what we're to do must begin by talking about who we are. Not just who we are as creatures, not simply, thankfully, who we are as sinners, but ultimately who we are in union with Jesus Christ. Evangelical ethics speaks first of our identity and our nature, what's true of us because of Christ. And then, in light of that identity description, what's to be true of our behavior, what's to be called for in our practice. Philosophically, we might say that in so doing, we're addressing Christological metaphysics, description of reality in union with Christ, before speaking of Christological ethics, the call to follow Jesus and to be discipled by him. That's the approach we'll take. We'll think in light of the gospel about the call to live today. As we do so, we'll explore a number of texts and questions. We'll seek to learn from figures from the near and far past. And we'll seek always to orient ourselves first and foremost to biblical teaching, realizing that the way in which Christ shapes us today is through his living word, which is active, which cuts to the very core of our being. Doing ethical study is a part of Christ's ongoing work. As we listen to his word, he's about the task of sanctifying us, of discipling us. And so the very task of studying theological ethics is itself a part of our ethical calling, as we seek to have our minds renewed by his great grace, by the mercies of God, shown forth and worked out, not just in the past, and not just in his return yet to come, but in the present, as Christ ministers his grace to us now, bringing about newness, freshness, and life. And so the very task of evangelical ethics, with which I hope you'll join me, is a task to undergo and to receive and to benefit from the ongoing life-giving blessings of this Jesus and that gospel, a gospel that brings great hope, not just for a life in the hereafter, but for the calling and the mission that God gives us and brings us to share in here and now. The gospel is wide, and yet the gospel is centered. As we focus on its center in Christ, we'll begin to see its application and implications for a wide circumference, for every facet of our lives, for every nook and cranny of human existence. As we think centrally about who Christ is and what he's done, we'll begin to see how that sheds light, not only on who we are, but on who he's bringing us to be and what he's calling us to do. That's what it means to study evangelical ethics.